Well, howdy folks, this is Hellcracks here, and welcome to Mercenary Thoughts from the Inner Sphere, episode 98, moving on to 100. Alright, today we're going to be talking about the Rhino Heavy Tank from the Star League. It's kind of an interesting little design mech that finds itself rampaging through the Inner Sphere since the early days. I kind of like it because it can be used in many different ways to cause havoc. It's a great fire support little tank. Well, it's really a little tank. It's pretty big, to be honest with you. So, now, let's just talk about the Rhino. Now, the Rhino is 80 tons from the Star League. Comes in around, I think it's $14.60 for battle value. It's a 3.5 mover, so an 80-ton tank that's 3.5. It seems like we have a lot of 80-tonners out there, like the Shrek PPC carrier. You got the Demolisher, you know, those some examples of 80-tonners. It's kind of one of those tanks where 3.5 isn't great. It's not bad. When you move it at 3.5, you put a ton of weaponry on it. So, carries around a 10 heat sinks because it has a fusion reactor, which kind of, well, let's make use of that eventually. The standard 2751 came in with 272 points of armor, which is a lot. But typically, to be honest with you, these tanks usually are a pillbox long before they become dead from getting destroyed from blowing out the internal structure. Now, weaponry carries around 2 LRM10s in the turret with 3 tons of ammo, which is in the body. So basically can blast away for 9 turns or longer, depending if you do single shots, if you have some bad fire solutions. 2 medium lasers in the turret, which kind of interesting because it shows 3. And then an LRM10 in the front hull with a ton of ammo, so you can get 12 shots out of that one. So, when you look at this thing, this is a fire support mech. Well, it's not a mech. Well, it's an 80-tonner, but it's a tank. And at 80 tons, this thing will kind of, it's like a LRM carrier, but has a ton of armor to go with it, so it can move forward, trundle forward, and get itself into a closer fire solution compared to, like with the LRM carrier. I'm always trying to hide those things, because the moment one of those things is exposed, everybody just turns their eye looking at it. It's like, that's a quick way to kill 3 LRM20s. So basically, I always hide those things behind a hill or behind some woods or something, and always fire them indirect and try to work them in conjunction with some either hovercraft or some infantry or something to help myself out there a little bit so they don't die. So basically, when an LRM carrier, I fire them when the ammo bays are dry, turn them around and drive away. Or a lot of times is that you turn the vehicle around, since the weapons, you know, and then you're gone. Okay. Now this thing has a turret with those 2 LRM20s and with an LRM10 in the hull, you can move forward and hit your enemies pretty decently. So you can get within medium range and short range. Try to get into that sweet spot of 7 on a target someplace and just unload on it, and hopefully you're gambling on trying to hit it with the 50 points of damage, which is highly unlikely, because most of the time when you do hit, you're gonna, with the LRM20s, usually my experience is that I'm usually within the 12 range. Sometimes I get a 16, sometimes it's even like a 9. And the same thing can be said about the LRM10. You're going to be hitting with a heck of a lot less than the actual 10. So the odds are you're typically hitting with around 30 points out of the 50. But still, that's a lot of damage, even though it's 5-point blocks scattered around. That is enough to scrape away a lot of individuals' armor. And when you also think about it, is that if you have some mechs forward that have some like PPCs, large lasers, or AC-10s and stuff like that, where they tear off big blocks of armor to begin with, then you hit them with this LRM carrier. Basically what it is, it's an LRM carrier that's beefed up on steroids, is that you can use it for crit hunting. All right, that's what I like using these things for. Now, when you trundle forward, you also, if you get within that objects that are kind of close within 9, you have those 2 medium lasers. So you do have some point blank range weaponry that can affect somebody that's getting in close, be it say a light mech or medium mech that's moving pretty fast, like say a Phoenix Hawk or a Jenner or something like that decides to get in real close and unload with its weaponry on you and then give you a swift kick in the behind. So you do have something that can affect them up close, but you're better off with this thing because it is a fire support vehicle to, try to stay at a slight distance. But if somebody decides to get in close on you, you do have the opportunity to hit them. Now, I usually, if I do, it's like you run them in pairs. So if I'm running in pairs, I'll have like say 2 rhinos and then 2 other vehicles. And what works really good with these things is either a 2 Shrek PPC carriers. So if you're really thinking about using this as a fire support platform, you have the 2 rhinos and you get 2 Shreks. So you're just tearing somebody a new one, because you could hit them with up to 6 PPCs, and then you hit them with all those LRMs, which if you hit with all 6 PPCs, let me tell you, I've seen, and just in the last game we had an Atlas that got hit 2 turns in a row from Shrek PPC carriers, and it was basically ripped to pieces, and then got hit with 2 LRM carriers following up with the crits, and those kept getting critted with center torso hits. So yeah, it's really good to do it, to combine it with something that tears the armor off, and then use this thing as a crit hunter. Now, some individuals, which I've played games before, will run like a demolisher with them as they're moving forward, because this thing can handle moving forward. I think it was at it was Origins, where I had actually it was 2 Ontos and then 2 of these, and I was moving right down the middle of the board, and I was just pushing guys back. They'd try to get in close, and I'd unload them with all those medium lasers from the Ontoses. And then this one had their 2 medium lasers as a secondary, and then they were firing at something that was a better fire solution with the LRMs. And I was just pile driving, and these guys finally motive hitted me to the point where I was just a pillbox. So I was moving at basically a 1-2 moving, then eventually I couldn't move at all. I'll just sit there. And all I did was I just kept firing my LRMs until the ammo bays were dry. But the end result is that I think I killed off a couple heavy mechs and a couple medium mechs. So I basically all by myself wiped out a complete lance before they just realized that, oh my god, these things, they were pretty much one guy was shooting at me, which was causing the motive hits. And then I'm just tearing up lances because they were ignoring me. Oh, it's just a vehicle, ignore them, they're not going to do anything. Well, I was doing stuff. And then they had to either go through me or around me to try to take position, and I just hunkered down and created a pillbox out of myself. And basically 4 tanks won the day against a bunch of mechs. Now, it can be done. So now, if you decide to use this thing more like a LRM carrier, you can just hide it behind a hill structure or buildings, because with a vehicle being so low, they can hide behind a building and not be seen fairly decently, and just fire indirect. Or when you're moving forward across the table, it's being a 3-5 mover, you're not very fast. So you're going to be trundling along, and you can just continually fire your LRMs out at different targets that are at range. And when you do get, so you can switch over from being indirect fire to direct fire, if that's what the circumstances are directing you to do, which is not a bad deal. And I like these little tanks. And there are times I thought about getting a couple more and add them to the collection, so maybe having a complete lance or 4. That would be kind of an interesting little deal. Now, one thing I have done in the past is that you look at the picture of the Rhino here. It does show it has 3 medium lasers in the turret. And what I've done was like, yeah, this thing has a ton of armor. We're talking 272 points of armor. I have, in the past, taken 1 ton of armor off this thing and added 1 more medium laser. So now you have 3 medium lasers instead of just 2, because you got a fusion engine. You can dissipate 9 heat. Why not toss another medium laser on it? So you got 3 of them, do a little more damage, a little more close-in support comparatively. And with that drops you down to 256 points of armor. 256 points of armor is a lot when it comes to a tank, because odds are you're just going to be motive hit anyway and become a pillbox. So you might as well just park it someplace and try to, basically, you end up becoming a zone area that either they have to deal with you and tear you down, or they are ignoring you. One way or the other. So they have to decide, are they going to take on the tanks, or are they going to go after maybe your mechs that are in support? And a lot of times you run these things with, like I said earlier, is that, let's say you got a Pegasus or a Maxim, which is another good little hovercraft, with a platoon. Say you got a Maxim with 2 Maxims and a couple platoons of infantry that can move along with these things. Especially, they're not that fast most of the time, so they drop the infantry off a little forward to be your spotters while you're moving forward, and use them as indirect spotters for you. And then the Maxims can turn around and start harassing the enemy also after they dumped off their troops, and then you work them in conjunction together. So you get your almost a combined arms. You don't have, let's say, the mechs at the moment, but let's say you do have a lance and mechs. Let's say a medium lance of something. Let's like say a couple Phoenix Hawks or something of that nature that are fast moving flankers that kind of help protect your flank and run the enemy's opponent's light mechs away from you and push them back, so these guys can move forward and create a base of fire for you. That works pretty good. Well, that's kind of like how I like using these guys. And then you're sitting forward, and then you're raining death on somebody until the ammo bays are dry. And then when that point comes forward, and with the version I have, then you still at least have 3 medium lasers to cause some damage with. And most games, Battletech, like I always talk about, the rugby scrum happens someplace. If a game lasts 10 turns, you're doing a lot of maneuvering, and it's usually, typically, a game that lasts that long is a lot of lights and mediums that are having a hard time hitting each other. And when you get at something that's heavier with some better gunnery in it, things die pretty quickly. So that's pretty much the Rhino in a nutshell. And if you like the tank and you like using it, put your stories down below. And I always like reading everything, and I try to respond to everybody the best I can and the time constraints that I have. So if you got anything you want to put her down below. Like and subscribe. Share it with your friends. Let's build this channel. Alright, well, I'll talk with you later. This is Hellcracks, and we'll see you on the flip side.